Look, and look what you've done to London. Tower Bridge right now is a complete basket case. It can't actually function.
And that's under Sadiq Khan.
It's utterly idiotic and dangerous for you to try and tie the Labour Party.
Oh, yes, but actually...
There's no need to do that.
Banishing London's... I think, actually, London's Jews deserve better than what you've given them. And that man that you've backed on 2 occasions in the form of Sadiq Khan.
Well, I think that is Islamophobic. Saying that because he's a Muslim that he has a problem with Jews. I tell you what, he's been very clear
say that.
About
he hasn't, as Police and Crime Commissioner, he has absolutely not stood up for Britain's Jewish
Benjamin, he allowed it to be projected onto our Parliament.
Exactly.
Do you know how frightened Jews are in London? He is the mayor. He's allowed 2-tier policing and given a soft touch to those Hamas-supporting protests.
I'm going to do you as a service. We're ending it there. Still to come tonight, though, good news for real men everywhere. Belinda de Lucia is backing the dad bod. And speaking of dad bods, Liz Truss is supporting Donald Trump. We'll see what Benjamin makes of that. But next, it's Ben Leo. He'll be discussing Shamima Begum and whether it's right that she continues to receive huge amounts of legal aid. I'm sure Ben will be up for personally funding Shamima's campaign.
Yeah, right.
You're with the Saturday 5 Live on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Claire, you want to talk by cars growing by a couple of centimetres a year?
Yeah, well, 1 centimetre every 2 years.
Okay.
It's unrelenting because the people are so fixated on the big SUVs. The sales have gone through the roof, and yet it's James Nix, the analyst for Transport and Environment campaign, said the author of the report on the trend said, spurred on by sales of the largest SUVs, vehicles are getting wider every year. Now, what does that mean for us? Well, it means that our roads weren't...
comfortable ride, beautiful engines, smooth. I mean, it's luxury, it's gorgeous.
Well, as I know, I used to have 2, but I don't...
You used to have 2 SUVs?
Well, 1 SUV at a time, but I had 2 brands of them. But I'd no longer drive in London now because I just don't see the point, because of the ULEZ, because of the, you know, you can turn down a thing and get fined.
Parking spaces, whatever.
The growth in car size also causes issues for their drivers. The report found that largely luxury SUVs, which are about 2 metres wide, no longer fit in off-street parking.
That's true.
They also leave too little space for passengers to get in and out of the vehicles in typical off-street spaces, and they're about 2.4 metres wide, the report found. And I'll tell you, I was stuck in a bus last night trying to get home, and the buses couldn't move because the streets were too crammed with all of these massive cars either side.
Chelsea tractors.
And it was gridlocked.
Yeah, but maybe they're not the problem, maybe the buses are the problem.
The buses take people to their place of work and get them
I'd like
home.
to know when, because when I go through London, all I see is empty buses.
Oh, you're lucky. Every time I'm on one, they're full.
Well, they're obviously only full at rush hour. You see, the thing is, property developers, when they do high-rise car parks or, you know, they build a multiplex cinema and there's a car park attached to it, that's not my fault that I can't fit into their space. It's their fault. So
well, it's all driven by money, isn't it? The more spaces that they have, the more people they can get.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. As always, cheers very much for your company and your emails. Gary's written in about Ukraine and Boris Johnson. Gary says funding Ukraine through controversial aid charities is only ever going to prolong the conflict with Russia. But Kath has an opposing view, and Kath says, I don't get why people moan about giving money to Ukraine. We should all just be grateful that we here in Britain live in a peaceful country. So that's two sides of opinion.
Not so much anymore.
Well, up next, it's Ben. Ben, what have you got for us tonight?
Right, this is going to be short and sweet. The nation breathed a sigh of relief yesterday as Shamima Begum's court bid to return to the UK after having her citizenship stripped was dismissed. Thank God for the Court of Appeal judges. Well done. As a reminder, Shamima Begum, she was the ISIS bride. She ran off to Syria in 2015 with her schoolmates, decided to join the terrorist death cult who, if you don't remember, burned people alive in cages, stoned women and children, behaved in the most barbaric way. Shamima had her citizenship stripped. She's now languishing in a Syrian refugee camp. But my point is, she's now going to go with her Golden Goose lawyers to the Supreme Court to try and overturn that Court of Appeal decision bid yesterday. And do you know who's going to pay for it? Me and you. Up to £5 million worth of legal aid is going to be spent if it reaches the Supreme Court, and even more if it goes to the European courts as well. I say she is a British traitor. She's no longer technically British. We should not be paying a penny more of her legal aid when there's so much money needed and better causes here back in the UK. Benjamin, do you agree we should rid our hands of Shamima? No more legal aid. She needs to stay in that refugee camp in Syria and just spend the rest of her days there.
No, I don't, because although the price is high in terms of the cost of legal aid for a case going on this long, that is the price of a democracy and a functioning justice system to which we should all want to belong.
She's had justice.
Because you don't know if you might end up in a situation where you can't afford to fight a case where there is a human rights question.
I'm sorry.
And the truth is that it's not a judgment to say that what she has done is right. What she's done is very, very wrong. But I think there is an inherent racism in the treatment of Shamima Begum.
For joining a terrorist group?
Change the
You absolute joker.
Because the only way they can legally attempt to justify taking away her British citizenship is because one of her parents was from Bangladesh. It is illegal
and they don't want her either
to leave somebody stateless. She is our responsibility, our problem, and should be in a British prison.
If she was Swedish or German or American and the same situation was happening, would you call that racist in that?
You wouldn't even hear about the case.
Or is it just because it's Bangladesh?
That wouldn't happen because there's no way we would try and send them to Sweden because they wouldn't accept.
Sorry, this is utter rubbish. Jack Letts, white male, got his British citizenship revoked because he joined ISIS before all of this. So white male happened to him. What are you talking about? It's about racism. Every single person who joined ISIS who has dual citizenship should have it absolutely stripped.
But she doesn't have dual citizenship, and it is based on a claim about her parents' birthplace for which she has no connection.
Which obviously the courts think is fair enough. British citizenship is precious. It is a privilege.
Right.
It is a privilege.
Not a privilege.
Let me finish. If you want to dilute it by having a dual citizenship and have allegiances to other country, have the privilege of working, voting, living in another country, there is also a cost.
Can I remind you?
And the cost is if you commit serious crime on your bike, goodbye, you lose the privilege of British citizenship.
Can I remind you some of the things Shamima Begum has said since she escaped, so she calls it ISIS? She said that the Manchester Arena bombing was, quote, justified because of the way the West had behaved in the Middle East. She told a BBC reporter that she was attracted to join ISIS initially because of beheading videos. And then she also said that she was over the death of her 3 children. Does that sound like someone you want walking the streets of Britain?
No, there's no question about whether what she did right or wrong. And I'm the only person on this programme who's had an interview with Shamima Begum where she said she regretted the things that she said in the past.
She did.
But this is a question for a justice system. It's not about whether what she did was right or wrong. It's about the fact that she has a right to British citizenship.
There is no justice because I tell you why there's no justice. Anyone who commits a crime on foreign soil will not get the justice that those poor Yazidi women deserve. They deserve their day in court with her in Syria because the laws in this land will give her a slap on the wrist and let her out in 6 months. So stop talking about justice. There will be no justice for the Yazidi raped girls and the murdered Yazidi boys for Shamima Begum in this country.
The other week you were talking about why you oppose the death penalty and yet you're effectively accepting it for her here. She may well be burned alive in her
penalty here?
tent.
That's a reach.
Because there's a serious risk that the place where she is in northern Syria, that she'll be killed alive.
She's
fine. Do you really think that would be an acceptable form of justice?
She shouldn't
You sound like ISIS.
Oh my God.
Benjamin. She went to join ISIS. She should reap what she sows. I'm glad that her citizenship has been revoked, quite frankly, and I speak as a person in a similar situation to Shamima Begum. I've got a claim to foreign citizenship. I don't have any problem with people like Shamima Begum never being let in this country.
And do you know what? My biggest concern is...
I thought you were about to say you were a member of ISIS there. Actually, do you know what? I have absolutely no confidence that actually British justice would stand up and say this person has time and again said that she does not regret everything that has happened.
And she'll be out on the streets in a couple of weeks if she gets...
I also find it really rich, by the way, that the Labour Party turn around and say, oh, she was only 15. They want to give 16-year-olds the vote.
And Brianna's killers were only 15 and they got sent away quite rightly for life.
My concern is how many more Shamima Begums are walking the streets of England right now.
Well, there we are. Still ahead, though. We've got Belinda de Lucy talking about dad bods. What more could you possibly want from a Saturday night? And next, we've got Liz Truss, who's been getting mixed reviews for her foray into US politics. We'll find out what Benjamin thinks. You're with the Saturday 5 Live on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight. Weekdays from 9 p.m.
Mike Freer joins me now. Mike, thank you very much for coming into the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
Firstly, how are you?
It's been a busy day, and it's been quite a traumatic experience. It's a real wrench to walk away from a job that you love, but also a constituency that you've become... You know, I live there, it's my home, and I regard many of my constituents as friends, and it is an amazing place, and to walk away from that is really quite... it's quite an emotional wrench to think this was a job I loved, but unfortunately I can't do it anymore.
Can you talk me through the process? Because you mentioned about the alleged arson attack, etc., being the final straw, but this has been a really quite vile journey to get to this point. So what kind of threats have you had? What's that look like?
Well, like every MP, I mean, you day in, day out, you get abusive emails, you get low-level stuff that, whether we should accept it, but we do, it's graffiti, it's things like, in the past, I've had a mock Molotov cocktail left on the office door, meaning we had to evacuate the whole building. I've come out of my house and found a note on my car. Where I live is common knowledge, but what I drive is less so. And it's a few weeks after John Mann had the wheel nuts on his car tampered with. So that all kind of makes you get a bit, what on earth's going on. But I've had 2 run-ins with the organisation that was Muslims Against Crusades, and people like Anjum Chowdhury, who was behind that organisation, been to prison, but online it said, I used to do surgery in mosques, so I wanted to go out and see people. And online it's a picture of me saying, you're not welcome in our mosque, let Stephen Timms be a pointed reminder. So it's not very subtle.
Well, just for our viewers and listeners who might not remember that,
Stephen Timms, of course, was stabbed by a woman who'd been radicalised. Thank heavens he survived. So it was a very unsubtle.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Your emails are flying in as usual on Shamima Begum. Lots of views. Judith has written in. Good evening, Judith. She says, some will say Shamima is being used as a scapegoat, but if we let her back, it will set a precedent for other terrorists or would-be terrorists to claim the sympathy vote. And Jane says, Shamima Begum was groomed as a child. We need to be more sensitive. Thank you, Benjamin, for writing in as Jane. Now, next up, it's time for the next debate. Up next, it is indeed Benjamin, and we're going to hear what the wokest person in Britain has to say for himself.
Well, we're talking about the curious case of Liz Truss. Now, if you were on holiday in the autumn of 2022, let me just tell you that she was Prime Minister for a few days. She'd always been a strong supporter of internships. I just didn't think that we'd have an internship for the office of Prime Minister. But good for you, Liz. I hate when people mock her for that. But now she's gone from being a Commons clown to being a dangerous conspiracy theorist. The other day, she was speaking at a very right-wing conference in the US where she claimed that we have a deep state controlling Britain and an elite that is not letting the people be heard. This is conspiratorial stuff. She then sat next to Steve Bannon, the guy that masterminded Trump. And while he sat there and praised Tommy Robinson, the convict Tommy Robinson, who many would call an outright racist, he's called Tommy Robinson a hero. And Liz Truss, our former Prime Minister, nodded along. And then, to make it even worse, she said that we should have Donald Trump back as US president, something that 2 UK ambassadors to the US have said would be incredibly dangerous for the West, something Liz Truss claims to care about. So, look, I get that, the only thing you're known for is crashing the economy and barely being able to get through a 3-minute local radio interview. You probably would want to be known for something other than that. But I don't think being a wacko conspiracy theorist is it. So here's my pitch. If we've got a second Prime Minister watching the show tonight, in Rishi Sunak, I say to you, Rishi, it's time to remove the whip from Liz Truss and show your leadership. Now, we've actually got the head of the Liz Truss Fan Society with us on the programme tonight. Ben Leo, thanks for joining me. What do you think? Do you think that she's undermining Britain?
How is she undermining Britain?
With this conspiratorial stuff.
Why is saying the deep state conspiratorial? And over here, we just call them quangos, the civil service, Whitehall being obstructive. That's what the deep state means.
I don't think it is. She's trying to say that there are illicit people out there controlling the country that aren't doing what the people want.
There are. Nadine Dorris wrote about it in her book, The Plot. She was a former Conservative. Was she still an MP? No, she's... No. Nadine Dorris wrote about it in her book.
She's not a peer either.
No, of course not. But to say the deep state is just... It's not conspiratorial. It's just talking about...
She was talking about the Financial Times and The Economist being part of some deep state which was against her free market agenda.
The Financial Times is some globalist publication linked to the IMF, linked to the World Bank.
Liz Truss is a globalist. You do know that. She's an internationalist classical liberal. She's a fan of Adam Smith, Milton Friedman and Hayek.
I've had this discussion with you on Twitter before. Globalist does not mean open markets trading around the world.
Sorry, what does globalist mean if not free markets and free trade?
Mass migration, open borders, pushing agendas such as the trans agenda and gender ideology.
Read a politics book. That is not what
Net
globalist
zero,
means.
the green agenda.
You need to read a politics book. That is not what globalist means.
And also,
Liz Truss is a hypocrite. She was rubbish at her job at Prime Minister. Now she's looking for any excuse.
You can't judge her on her performance as Prime Minister.
She's looking for any excuse to come up with as to why she was such a failure, instead of just taking the bullet like Kwasi Kwarteng and saying, look, we made some mistakes, forgive me, now I'm going to stand down from Parliament. That's what Liz
She should lose the whip, right?
Look, I think the Prime Minister has a difficult decision to make when it comes to Liz Truss. She's just causing problems for the Prime Minister week after week after week. Quite frankly,
Liz Truss, if she was given a chance, would have been the best Prime Minister to save your party, and that's why you're in the problem you're in, Albie. Your party is about to get obliterated because the powers that be in that party took her down. Now you're stuck with Rishi Sunak and a party full of Lib Dems in disguise and members.
Liz Truss was a Lib Dem, you do know that.
Yeah, but now she's a proper Conservative. She saw the light.
She was a student.
Belinda, even Reform UK has said that it doesn't want Tommy Robinson in its ranks, and yet there's a former Tory PM nodding along to him being called a hero. Does it not make you uncomfortable?
I think you're being too harsh. I've certainly been in interviews when things have been said and my mind has been elsewhere because I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next and I haven't necessarily taken in how to respond to something. She didn't agree. You're just saying you interpreted her response as a nodding along. What I would say is Liz Truss has lifted the lid on forces at work in Parliament that are not elected, that are not democratic, that have been hindering policies being driven through. I felt it very much during the Brexit years. There were absolutely civil service at work trying to overturn a democratic vote. They should have no power to do so. And Liz said, and this is one of the quotes I totally agree with, she said, as PM, she discovered that role as Prime Minister, it didn't let you hold any of the levers. The levers were held by the Bank of England, the OBR, not held by the PM, not held by the Chancellor. This is important, very, very scary stuff, because if you're electing a party, if you have a Chancellor and PM that have no control over the economics of your country,
Benjamin,
what's the point in voting at the ballot box?
Sorry to interrupt you, Belinda. We even had the World Bank a few weeks ago saying that the Tories, this government of the United Kingdom, shouldn't raise taxes because it wouldn't be good for growth. Who are these people?
Who runs the country?
For the record, that's exactly what Margaret Thatcher said when she came to power.
OK.
And look, she sits there saying the wokerati and communists are controlling the country. I'm sorry, how many communists are in the Bank of England and in FTSE 100 CEOs?
Probably more than you think.
Well, there are a lot in schools and universities.
All right.
And politician.
Dare I say, let's not forget that Sue Gray, who was responsible for that Partygate report that undid Boris Johnson's premiership, now leading the Labour Party and directing everything there. So what does that tell us?
Prime example.
Still ahead, though. Some women say they prefer a dad bod to a more finely honed athletic type. But is Belinda Lucy among them? Well, it's a debate that's sweeping the nation and it's coming right up. You're with the Saturday 5 live on GB News.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Welcome to the show. Superb stuff, great footage. So you're right in the thick of it there. What's the mood on the ground?
Well, I've left there now. I've actually now come to that EU Council summit that I was talking about. It's still pretty chaotic. The entire city of Brussels has been completely clogged with these tractors, sort of 3 abreast in most of the roads across the city. The people of Brussels aren't particularly happy. I mean, this is sort of reminiscent for some people of the Just Stop Oil protests, you know, people gluing themselves. People are unable to get to hospital appointments, and there's a lot of upset about the destruction that's happening on the streets of Brussels today. But on the other side, there's also the protests, which the farmers are saying that EU green laws simply are not able to fit with what they need to do to keep their businesses going. And just before the protests happened, we saw the European Commission actually make some concessions to the farmers' protests. And this is on the demands that were put on them to set aside somewhere in the region of 5% of their land for regrowing for biodiversity. A lot of the farmers have said that's not possible, and the European Commission has said that they can delay that coming in. So they have won a small concession with these protests.
And Jack, there's a feeling as well, a huge dissatisfaction that the European Union has managed to find 50 billion euros in aid to send to Ukraine, and yet farmers in particular are on the receiving end of net zero targets, taxation on diesel and endless red tape. So many farmers, Jack, saying they're measuring ditches to see if they have to drain them or not. There are minimum requirements on the width of battery hen enclosures. Endless red tape, as Jeremy Clarkson pointed out in Clarkson's farm in Britain. They've simply had enough, and they're shouting, Ursula von der Leyen, we are here.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Saturday 5. Thank you very much for your emails. On Liz Truss, Anne has written in, and Anne says, as a Conservative Party member, I would still vote for Truss over Sunak, and many financiers have come around, actually, to say that her policies were the right policies. Albie Amankona has turned a shade of pink. And Steve says, Truss was never convincing, and now she's just contributing even more to the disaster facing the Tory party. You're suddenly very happy, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, it's Truss's fault, isn't it? Cool.
It is all Truss's fault.
But now it's time for our next debate. Up next, it's Belinda de Lucy.
So bulging biceps, six-pack chiseled abs and beefy stacked shoulders are often seen as the ultimate package women desire in men. And of course, there's nothing wrong with that. But recently, multiple surveys report on average women's preferences swaying towards the common man. Active, but more soft around the edges, cuddlier versions, suggesting that the famous dad bod is becoming more of an aphrodisiac for women of today. It's horses for courses, of course, but it is comforting to see. There is ever-growing pressure on young men, especially to get that quick fix six-pack and bulk up. Social media is filled with many a Hercules pumping iron with their huge muscles with hashtag no pain, no gain and hashtag go hard or go home. And as with young girls and weight pressures, it can enforce standards unattainable to most men who, in the online perfection world, can suffer from low self-esteem too. Not to mention the lifetime of gym routines needed and super strict diet devotion that can mean little time left for date nights. I'm keen on promoting healthy living for everyone, but fitness isn't all about granite, cut, zero-fat Hulk muscle bods. So let's celebrate how attractive men are in their normal, healthy body types too. I'm glad dad bods get the adoration they deserve. So I think we are going to...
You're a good personal trainer.
Have you got a vested interest?
Well, no, not at all. I have a lot of teenagers around the house, and a lot of the young men are super sort of addicted to a lot of these fitness apps and having these six-packs and things. And I thought it was quite a nice surprise that, on average, women sway a lot towards a sort of well-balanced man who has interest in other things other than themselves. And I thought that was just nice to see that the dad bod gets appreciation too.
Absolutely, and I think, do you know what? If actually a dad bod...
Speaking as a man who has a dad bod.
How dare you? I think actually if a dad bod means that you're spending your time with your kids and working, then...
Sorry, it only takes an hour to go to the gym. You're not down there for hours just to get in a fairly decent shape.
Some people don't come into a studio for 2 minutes and talk about things for their job, do they?
I've worked 17 days straight, thank you very much, and I've still gone to the gym today.
17 days straight. I think 3 hours a day.
You know, I've waited a long time to have Belinda's adoration, so I'm glad... you know, it was very good of you to come out and say it.
Pleasure.
You know, I think there is a problem here, that the reason that a lot of men, young men in particular, are obsessed with their physical appearance is that it's their appearance. It's not actually about the health. In fact, I think it's very bad for their mental health. You know, I actually, on Instagram, I refuse to follow people that show constant topless photos because I think it's bad for my mental health. I don't look like that. I'm probably never going to look like that.
Let me ask you a question.
And I think I think people have an unreasonable...
Well, we've got someone here. This is our wonderful panellist, Ben Leo, showing us it's the anti-dad bod picture. Look at that.
Who's been stalking my Instagram? Can I ask you something? Why does it make you feel bad looking at people with good bodies?
Because, first of all, I think often the photos online are edited to look better than they really are.
My picture there wasn't edited. Why does it make you feel bad?
Because I'm not fat, I'm not unhealthy weight, but I feel like that if I constantly see photos of a perfect...
So why don't you stop eating as much and go down the gym and you'll feel better?
Because I don't want to, Ben. I like eating food.
But you feel bad.
The way I
You're not happy because you feel bad.
No, I feel bad if I look at ridiculous people. I mean, you know, look, we can't all achieve the peaks of your physicality. But
yes, you can.
I think that it's much healthier for people to be comfortable with a little bit of weight. I buy into the Nigella Lawson approach. You know, she's always said that she'd rather be curvy and enjoy her food than be a stick-thin model. She's right.
Well, before I come to Albie and Darren, should we take a look at some dad bod photos and see what you think? Here we have Simon Cowell.
I don't consider that dad bod.
Oh, that's the dad bod.
He's got quite a decent chest. He obviously works his chest out. He's not skinny fat.
Well, Leonardo DiCaprio, he gets all the ladies. I'm sure it's got nothing to do with his wealth and fame. But I'm saying those kind of bodies, there's Gordon Ramsay there.
He works out. That's not a dad bod.
But they're normal, healthy, fit men, and I think they should be celebrated too. And a lot of women in all these surveys actually go for that because maybe these men, Adam Sandler, spend a little bit more time on other people than themselves.
I just don't believe the women answering that poll I think
Brosnan.
I think if they had a button to say, I want my husband to have a dad bod or to be athletic or even ripped, they'd choose the athletic.
You think
version
ripped, but there's nothing to snuggle up to at night if it's just a
Actually,
washboard
my
stomach.
kids say that. I'll pick my kids up and I'll put their, nestle their head in my shoulder, and my kid Jude will say, "Oh, you're so bony. You need some,
eat a pie." What do you think, Alfie?
The thing is, with ripped men, is I just assume every ripped man is gay, because normally the ripped men are gay. Most straight men have dad bods, and then you see all these ripped guys, and normally they're gay.
Yeah, let's be honest. You just say most women would choose that. I think most women don't have a choice.
Well,
and I'm sure some women would actually say, well, look, I don't want to go to bed with a skeleton.
Well, I don't think... I think all men in all their shapes and sizes...
As opposed to a dad bod.
They're delicious. I'm such a big fan of men as a sex. Right? Yeah, and I think tall, short, whatever size, men are wonderful. It may be for you,
my point is, do what makes you happy. If you're happy as you are, that's great. But when you and your ilk say it makes you unhappy to see pictures of fit people on the internet, that is a problem with you and no one else.
But the point is that it's not about their level of fitness.
No, it's not about fitness.
That's my entire point.
And that doesn't matter.
There's a lot of men, young men, and let's bear in mind...
Why shouldn't people want to look good?
The number one cause of death for under 40s that are men is suicide, and that's because they have a sense that they're not fulfilling an expectation.
Or not man enough, unless they are like Hulk Hogan.
If you went back to the 50s, which is the era Belinda would love to live in...
I would.
OK, men didn't have six-packs, right? They weren't...
Yes, they did.
They weren't fat.
Yes, they did.
They weren't unhealthy. They were a lot healthier than today.
That is true.
But you didn't go around having all these men having incredible chiseled bodies because they were healthy, not fitness-obsessed. And I think fitness-obsessed is itself unhealthy.
That extent of fitness, being ripped, low 10% body fat, that's fine, but 6-7% body fat isn't.
But that's the craze on social media.
Because it's not sustainable, and you have to really... It's just a really obsessive way of life. However, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be fit and look good.
No, we can agree on that.
Even if it's just to look good and its appearance.
You post that online on social media.
Hang on.
Do that for the likes.
We're going to wrap up now.
Someone stole
all
my
the
Instagram.
dads at home with your dad bods, thank you very much for watching. Thanks as always to Albie, Benjamin, Belinda and Ben. But most of all to you wonderful viewers. Clive's written in. He says, I've had a dad bod for many years. I ride Harley Davidsons and trust me, I've never had a problem with women. Well, there we are. Next up, it's the brilliant Leo Curse with the Saturday Night Showdown. Cheers for watching, and we'll all see you again next week.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather. I'm Greg Dewhurst. We'll see some frost and fog forming through tonight, but we do have some heavy rain moving into southern parts of England and Wales as we go through Sunday and into Monday, courtesy of this area of low pressure. Met Office warnings already out for this part of the world through into Monday morning. This evening, though, plenty of dry weather across the UK, some clear spells, and this will allow temperatures to fall away overnight below freezing, -7 or 8 across the glens of Scotland. Some mist and fog patches forming. But by the end of the night, cloud and rain pushing into southwest England. So wet start here to Sunday morning elsewhere. A grey start in places, some mist and fog patches. But once these clear, there'll be plenty of sunny spells, particularly across Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England. Cloudier generally for the rest of England. Wales, with this rain slowly pushing its way eastwards across southern counties, turning heavy at times. Some localised flooding is possible. For most temperatures near average, 7 to 9 Celsius, 10 or 11. But the strength of the wind just making it feel colder here. For Monday, early rain across the southeast, some uncertainty how quickly this will clear away, but for many after a chilly start it will be a fine day, plenty of sunny spells, just a few showers, but quite a keen east-northeasterly breeze, particularly in the east. Over the next few days it stays unsettled with further spells of rain, temperatures generally near or a little above average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Are you across this microaggression story?
I'm across microaggressions. I'm also across XL bullies.
You would not last 5 minutes.
Oh, for God's
So
sake, civil servants, give me strength.
So civil servants have been taught not to roll their eyes. Something you do very well. We both do it quite a lot, actually.
Because it's seen as an act of microaggression. This, by the way, this costs the taxpayer, this training, £160,000. What the hell is going on in our woke civil service? Who cares if someone rolls their eyes in exasperation?
What the hell is going on in our civil service, full stop, if the way that civil servants are communicating with each other is rolling their eyes and looking at their phones? I mean, is the government being run by people who are essentially acting to each other like stroppy teenagers?
But I'm all right with people, because, you see, I would be in defence of eye rolling.
So me too, I couldn't care less.
But do you know why? Because I want people to give me their genuine reaction, as long as it's not deeply offensive. But I want to know how people feel. And what they're being told here, civil servants are being taught, and of course this is an area of employment law, because people are taking cases against their bosses who roll their eyes at them. They're saying they're being encouraged to say nothing and nod their heads to promote transparency and inclusion. Don't show what you really think, just nod your head.
But I think that comes with then saying what you really think, and this is the key problem, and what these courses are trying to establish. And I looked into some of them when I was researching this, and it's not saying hide what you're feeling. It's saying, rather than huffing and puffing and rolling your eyes, if you've got a disagreement with someone, say I've got a disagreement with someone. Because otherwise, you can't have an effective workplace if people are sort of just passively, aggressively huffing at each
Why
other.
do these civil servants need to be taught this? Why do people need to be taught this? This is just normal discourse in a normal working day. You don't need a